I mean, look, let's get it straight out there. I mean, clearly it was a stupid and offensive thing to write.
Yeah, of course. I think, like you said, a stupid and kind of silly thing for me to say. I reacted to kind of a notification and the headline. I had no real context for, what happened. I didn't really understand the severity of the situation.
So this is George Abaronia. He is the former president-elect of the Oxford Union, which is one of the most prestigious institutions in the entire world. And the reason he is described as a former president-elect and not current president is because recently he was ousted from that position via a vote of no confidence. And now he's going on a mainstream media tour in order to rehabilitate his reputation, because he said some things that were questionable, that were silly, that were ridiculous, that honestly he didn't understand the full weight of, and he finds it rather absurd that a couple of months later he still has to live with the consequences of something that he said. Now, of course, the thing that he said, the thing that he did, was celebrate the murder of Charlie Kirk, so there's a bit of irony in that this guy is trying to play the victim, trying to say that 2 months of consequences should not be applied for his free speech when he was celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk for Charlie Kirk's free speech. So he thinks eternal consequences for Charlie Kirk, but a couple of months of consequences on him not being able to have the privilege of being the head of the Oxford Union during his time in university. No, that is too much. He is the real victim of the Charlie Kirk assassination, and the mainstream media is lining up in droves in order to back this guy up, but we are not tolerating that over here. So this is what we're going to talk about today, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Did you know who Kirk was?
I did know who Kirk was. I previously debated him.
And I acknowledge that, right? I even at the beginning, remember, I'm saying the biggest, the one that has an exponent on it, is that we have a biological urge that God gave us when he designed us, which is to be fruitful and multiply, for men to provide for the family. And when we suppress that, and we say that you can go live whatever lifestyle you would like, as already happens in the West. We have Exhibit A. We have a serious suicide, mental health, anxiety, depression issue. So I would just ask you to think over the next couple of days, months, or years, why is it that men in countries that barely have toilets and do not have 2 pounds to rub together, but they do have kids and they do have a wife, are much happier than someone with a big flat in downtown London? Something to think about.
I mean, I think happiness is a difficult idea to conflate in that sense. I mean,
there are other
suicides.
They're less likely to kill themselves. Forget all these happiness indexes. If you kill yourself, you're not happy, right? So these poor countries do not have male suicide problems. Why?
I do not know.
Think about it. Thank you very much.
So I just showed you a clip of our buddy Georgie actually debating Charlie Kirk in person, who is kind enough to spare his time to come down to Oxford University in order to get into it with these particular students. And the reason I wanted to show you this is that this is not a random student at a random university that had no interaction with Charlie Kirk. He allegedly had a respectful dialogue with him, a respectful debate in person. And guess what? Even though he met him in person, even though presumably that interaction went rather well. In fact, if you ask Charlie Kirk how it went, he would probably say it went rather well. He still wanted Charlie Kirk murdered, which is very similar to how Kyle Kalinske, who also met Charlie Kirk, is reacting post his assassination, targeting Charlie Kirk's wife, which again is very similar to how Stephen Destiny Bonnell is reacting to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, who also met him in person. It is very important for you guys to understand that these people can be cordial to your face. These people can be polite, these people can engage in dialogue, but they will still go out of their way to cheer your death, mock your loved ones, celebrate your assassination just because you disagree with them politically. And again, I will point out that George is very, very upset in all the various interviews that he's doing that he is feeling consequences for the speech that he engaged in, speech that he posted on the internet, and by the way, some messages that were leaked from a WhatsApp chat room. But at the same time, he was celebrating the assassination of Charlie Kirk for Charlie Kirk's speech. Again, I'm not somebody who wants to cancel you for your opinion. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm all about. But if you think I'm going to stick up for you when that opinion is that other people should be murdered for their opinion, no, not happening. Absolute nonsense. In fact, if you submit the application for me to defend you when this is your opinion, here's what's going to be my reaction.
No, we're not doing that. That's embarrassing.
Now, with that being said, this guy is Oxford University's top debater, so maybe, just maybe, he will be able to convince me that my position on him is completely irrational and that he should be allowed back into polite society, and that vote of no confidence against him should be undone because, you know, he's just an innocent Baba Angel Aladdin who occasionally cheers murder for his political opponents from time to time.
But I didn't really understand, I think, the severity of the situation at the time, and, you know, I reacted poorly.
No, absolutely not. No way. This is ridiculous. Here you have a guy who, again, is at Oxford University, one of the most prestigious universities in the world, a member of one of the most prestigious organizations, was the president-elect of the Oxford Union, so again, was going to be in charge of said organization, and right now he is trying to convince people on national television, which, by the way, is being broadcast internationally, that he did not understand the severity of Charlie Kirk being shot in that particular situation. He just didn't understand what that actually meant, which is why, and by the way, it is not mentioned throughout the course of this entire segment, he posted in his WhatsApp group, "Let's effing go," after he heard about Charlie Kirk being assassinated. Then, in addition to that, he posted on Instagram, "Charlie Kirk was shot, LOL," because he just didn't understand that shot means something actually kind of bad. That means at least an attempted murder. In this particular case, it was a murder, a political assassination, and this guy, George, again, over at Oxford University, just did not understand the implications of somebody being assassinated for their political beliefs, and he finds it very disgusting that he is being character assassinated for his political beliefs, when in reality, he was just a dumb idiot who didn't understand in any way, shape, or form what it actually meant for somebody who was his political opponent to be shot. Now, he was celebrating this. He was like, "Let's effing go," which leads me to believe that he absolutely did understand, because essentially this guy had the same reaction that we saw all over TikTok, all across the left wing, which was great praise and jubilation at the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But for some reason, we are to believe that even though his reaction was accidentally identical to all the people on his side of the political spectrum who still celebrate Charlie Kirk's assassination to this very day. Yeah, just a coincidence. Isn't that weird? This guy didn't know anything. He didn't understand what being shot actually meant. Therefore, he reacted exactly as everybody reacted that's on his side of the political spectrum. Isn't it so sad for him that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and he just happened to be so confused at that moment in time that he happened to celebrate just like all of his contemporaries on the left, who all celebrated and published it on TikTok, and then that got hundreds of thousands of likes. Isn't that just a weird, odd, unfortunate coincidence for him?
And then upon kind of realizing just how serious kind of these things were, I kind of deleted everything. I posted on my social media kind of apologizing and reflecting on the moment, because I realized, you know, that reaction wasn't befitting of how severe the situation was, and this was all kind of a day before the news cycle and the press started, and so kind of, yeah, it's been kind of a lot than having to kind of deal with all of that going forward.
So look, this guy is saying that he took down his post and he apologized because he saw it was unbefitting of his position. The guy apologized after the backlash. So this is so obvious. Everybody was reacting in real time to this particular situation. And again, the idea that he was too stupid, just too much of a dumbass to know that somebody being assassinated for their political beliefs, or attempted assassination of somebody for their political beliefs, was a bad thing, is absurd and ridiculous. And the actual person doing the interview calls him out on this just a little bit. But again, you should read his quotes back to him and have him react to that, and have him explain how that was just him not really understanding the situation, while simultaneously having the same reaction of the broad left to the situation.
I want to talk about that, but I suppose just to say, because there'll be some people listening saying, well, you know, did you really need to know how severe the situation was? I mean, you knew a guy who you'd met had got shot. I mean, some people would say, How could you react that way?
No, of course, and I think it's a valid position.
Oh, is it a valid position? It's a valid position that people would look at your comments, look at you still not taking accountability for this particular moment, and then saying, oh, well, I just didn't understand the severity of somebody being shot. What a valid position, Mr. Hostman. Let me pivot off of me and what I did and how I reacted at that moment, which was celebration and jubilation to something I fully understood at the time that I posted those two different posts. Let's make no mistake about that. And pivot to Charlie Kirk's rhetoric and kind of blame Charlie Kirk for what he was saying for his assassination and his reaction to said assassination.
Why did you?
I think part of Mr. Kirk's comments don't exist in a vacuum, you know. He's an incredibly kind of polarizing figure, and I think it's almost a symptom of him and my reaction, a symptom of kind of how we have discourse online in which, you know, it's oftentimes very reactive. It's oftentimes about saying something almost inflammatory, almost because I wanted to say spark a conversation about kind of what happened, the fact that, oh my God, like this is such a major event that's just taken place. And
you wanted to get a reaction.
Exactly, I wanted to get a reaction. I wanted to have a conversation, and you know,
a laugh.
Almost exactly, like a laugh and a bit of a reaction. And kind of, I realized afterwards that, you know, that wasn't the right way to go about it. You know, that instead of having a conversation about perhaps Mr. Kirk and his political legacy, I was instead having conversations about, is that the appropriate way to react? And I don't think that was the kind of conversation I wanted to have.
You understand, obviously, why so many people found it so egregious.
Of course.
So this guy was the president-elect of the Oxford Union, and this is the best he can come up with 2 months later, 3 months later, after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which is, oh, well, I was trying to spark conversation. I was trying to engage with ideas and talk about Mr. Kirk's beliefs when I posted "let's effing go" in a private group chat. And then on my public Instagram, I then posted "Charlie Kirk was shot, LOL." And I was shocked and chagrined that the discussion that was being had, if you can believe it, Mr. Hostman, was about my comments and whether or not it was appropriate for me to actually speak out in that way. Honestly, guy, shut up. Shut the hell up. This is so ridiculous and absurd. And by the way, unintentionally, there's a kernel of truth in what he's saying right there, which is he deleted the comments when the conversation was about him and his ethics because he thought everyone genuinely agreed that it was a good thing to murder people for their political beliefs. That's where he thought everybody would be on this particular issue. And when he realized that people are not as dark or not as willing to go out and be publicly as dark as him, that's when he retracted, because the conversation was never meant to be about my beliefs. Over here at the Oxford Union, when somebody gets assassinated for their political beliefs, we want to discuss their inflammatory rhetoric and how, of course, they are responsible for their own homicide. I don't know if you're aware of this, sir, but Charlie Kirk's comments, they did not exist in a vacuum. I'm very intellectual, if you guys are aware of that. That's why I posted on my Instagram and on my WhatsApp private chat, "let's effing go," and of course, Charlie Kirk was shot, LOL. I just did not understand the concept of bullets going into an individual that I disagreed with, which is why I had that reaction. Seriously, like, is this really where we are right now? Is this really what we're doing? This guy needs his reputation rehabilitated when he still can't take accountability for his own actions?
Of course. Upsetting. Yeah, no, of course. I can understand why, because, you know, I think it's a very kind of shocking thing sometimes to see such a reaction like that.
But of course, you sent this message. It was in a private WhatsApp group. It was then leaked, I think. And then you found yourself at the centre of immense press interest,
yes.
immense media interest.
Yeah.
You know, leading politicians talking about you and about, because of the position you had as the president-elect of the Oxford Union, which is a famous debating society at Oxford University. Lots of politicians have attended there themselves. That must have been a very curious and weird period for you to find yourself. Yes, clearly a crass, stupid message, offensive message.
Of course.
But you found yourself scrutinised in a way that leading politicians are scrutinised.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a shock for me. I think there's a weird disconnect, I think, as a student versus, you know, your role within the Oxford Union. And as a student, you think, you know, you have the space to say stupid things, but then to, you know, make a mistake and learn from that and grow from that. And, you know, the assumption being that kind of growth and that kind of period of, say, criticism isn't going to happen across, you know, international news. And so definitely it was, you know, a bit of a shock for me to kind of, have to kind of like go through that. But then I think you know, in a sense, it's been quite formative as well.
So the next tactic to avoid accountability, again from the president-elect of the Oxford Union, is to talk about how he's so young and he's just a little baby boy. He just is not old enough at age 20 to understand that political assassinations are not to be celebrated, that murdering somebody for their political beliefs is not a good thing, and can you really expect him, again at his prestigious position, to have such complicated moral reasoning to understand that murder is not a good thing? I mean, guys, come on. What are you expecting from this guy just because he's at one of the most privileged positions at one of the most high-end universities in the entire world? Are you expecting him to understand the moral and ethical framework around murder being bad? Come on, guys. Like, seriously, relax. You guys need to calm down. You're the problem. And by the way, there's also a bunch of criticism that are coming from you guys out there in the audience about his opinions. That's just disgusting and completely out of bounds and unfair. The idea that you would attack him personally is just so horrible when, again, all he believes is that somebody should be assassinated, murdered for their beliefs. He doesn't get personal, though.
I think there are two sides to the scrutiny. I think, you know, there is fair criticism about kind of what I said and whether or not that reaction was fair or befitting of the situation. And I think we can all agree that that is perhaps fair criticism. I think the other side of the criticism I received was not necessarily about what I said, but more about what I looked like. It was about the grades I'd received. It was about kind of my background or me.
People suggested that you basically were DEI, that you got into Oxford.
Exactly, and I think
having no idea about your actual history and so on.
Exactly,
because you're a black man.
Yeah, exactly, and I think we can be like very specific and very deliberate in making distinctions to the fact that, you know, there is that fair criticism of me, and there should be a space to have that fair criticism of me, and, you know, be responsible in how we go about that in consideration of the fact that, you know, I am still a student. But then I think we can also be fair in calling out what has also been a lot of kind of just racist and classist vitriol based on the fact that I'm a black person, the fact that, you know, I'm a student at Oxford.
Listen, guys, I don't know if you guys know this. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but talking about DEI when it comes to this individual, disgusting, terrible, awful in every possible way, even though, again, these are policies that are actually instituted at universities like Oxford. And he's also simultaneously making the point that he is qualified for the position that he was elected to, while saying that he could not possibly be expected to understand that murder and political assassination is bad. But the thing that you guys really need to check is yourselves, because if you think it's acceptable to question this guy's qualifications, to say insulting things about him, the way that he was dressed in the Charlie Kirk debate and whatnot, then you really need to just check your premises, because in reality, that's totally out of bounds and not within the legitimate confines of debate. And he knows, because he totally understands boundaries and sensible, reasonable ways to attack people's ideas, in that he believes that you should be shot in the neck and murdered for your ideas. Again, this is so insane. Like, watching this whole entire interview, watching this guy's PR tour is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my entire life. This guy's legitimately making the case that it was out of bounds. And by the way, it's not appropriate to go out and personally target him or his family or send him threats and whatnot. But the thing is, this guy is not talking about how threats are bad or any of that. He's saying that murder is good. He's saying that executing those threats against somebody he disagrees with is perfectly fine, and just 5% of the standard that he holds Charlie Kirk to has been enforced on him, and he's throwing a bitch fit all over British television talking about how he is just this massive victim. Again, you think that the consequences for speech is somebody should be murdered, somebody should be executed, somebody should be assassinated. Those consequences should be permanent, but just a couple of months, not even 3 full months after Charlie Kirk's assassination, you can't bear some harsh criticism and some insults. Shut your mouth. Shut your stupid face. We are not on board with this. We don't care about your little PR tour. Go graduate university, change your name, do something of the sort, and live the rest of your life in shame, because you absolutely deserve it. But the thing is about this particular guy is he won't have to do that. This will work to a certain extent. He will get a job as a professor, and in a few years, he'll be talking about how he really never should have even halfway apologized about celebrating this assassination, because in reality, he's going to double down on what he actually believes, which is, yes, it is okay to murder people for their political beliefs, and that is disgusting. And by the way, I would just point out that in the UK, they don't have freedom of speech. They prosecute people for tweets, for posts, for private group messages. In fact, a woman who was assaulted by a man called that man a gay slur in a private text message to a friend that she was telling about the assault. That friend reported that message, and that woman was arrested for, again, calling her assaulter a gay slur in the UK. But this guy, not even experiencing those consequences that people in the UK experience when they're actual victims, is playing the victim right now before our very eyes, and he's being platformed because the media just thinks it's so unfair that you targeted this guy, because he thinks it's totally fair to target and assassinate people for their political speech. So yeah, I don't care about this guy. This is nonsense in every possible way. Cry me a river. Next time, don't be an absolute monster, and you won't be treated like one. But yeah, those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the absolute madness of the Oxford Student Union president-elect throwing a little bitch fit about being ousted from his position because he supports murder of people that disagree with him. Till next time.